Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Kickin Bass TV. Today, I've got another subscriber requested video. Had a gentleman contact me recently, said he fishes with my baits all the time, loves the kick and crawl in particular, and wanted to know if I do a video where I went to the store, bought a couple of big brand plastics and melted them down, shot them into arm molds and tried to catch some fish on them. So that's exactly what we're going to do in today's video. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button down below, and let's go. All right, so what we ended up with were 3 packs of Zoom Watermelon Red Shaky Headworms, 2 packs of Bass Pro Tournament Series 4-inch swim baits in a sprayed grass color, which is a really cool purple and green laminate with heavy purple and green flake, a little bit of black flake in there as well from what I could tell. So it's gonna be interesting to see what the final color ends up being, whether it's gonna be more on that brown or green end of the spectrum. I'm expecting kind of like a dirty green pumpkin from that, so we'll see. With the worms, that's more of a natural watermelon color with a large, medium, and small black flake, as well as a small red flake. So a lot of contrast with this color right off the bat. Gonna be cool to see what this ends up looking like in our craws and our ginger ninjas. Once we had everything separated into 2 different Pyrex cups, next step before we throw everything in the microwave, go ahead and chop these baits up real good. And the reason I like to cut them up first is it helps heat more uniformly, which is going to help you eliminate the chance of overheating your plastic, which is important, especially when you're doing remelt. If you haven't worked with stuff in the past, always best to start slow and low. Start off about 1.5 minutes, minute 45, and then go with 30-second intervals after that. As you can see, once we had it melted down, it looked really good. I love the potential of this color because of the texture with all the different sizes of flake and that dark, dirty watermelon green color, but it was also full of air bubbles. So first things first, we had to throw it into our vacuum chamber. What this is gonna do is gonna pull any excess moisture or air pockets that have found their way into our plastisol blend, make your plastisol more workable, eliminate the chance of there being any flaws in your baits. After we got it out of the vac chamber, it looked 100% better. We were able to remove all of the excess air bubbles. Color looked great. And all we had to do from there was give it a good stir because of the high salt content in this particular worm blend. After we had it temped, it was time to shoot a couple packs of kick and craws, half of which we're gonna use to fish with in the video. The other half we're gonna send to Jake, our subscriber who suggested today's video. Appreciate your input, Jake. Appreciate you supporting the channel. Hopefully you dig these baits. Just want to give a little something back for you giving us an awesome idea for a video. As you can see, the result on the first Remelt Watermelon Red, I really like the natural dirty watermelon green color here and the texture from the different sizes of flake. With the excess, we decided to pour a couple of our ginger ninjas just in case we get into some areas with some vegetation. This is an awesome punching bait this time of year. We got a lot of summering bass that are getting ready to pull off of their summer holds and start feeding up aggressively for that cold weather season. So with the texture of the appendages as well as the body of this bait, you can see has a lot of character. It's a really cool natural color for this particular bait and I can't wait to try it out. With the remaining plastic, I decided to shoot a batch of our Chub Grubs, which is a 5-inch curly tail grub with a fat body and a nice thick tail that kicks a ton of water, move through the column. When you throw these on a Ned rig, they're absolutely lethal when you're talking about smallmouth bass. For those of you that are into smallie fishing, check out the Chub Grub over at Kickin Bass Custom Baits, which we'll link down below. Next up, our sprayed grass swim baits. We've got those chopped up, like we said, to help us more evenly heat the plastic, eliminate our chances of burning it, potentially changing the color. As you can see, the purple and green ended up turning into a natural green pumpkin base. We still had a ton of issues with air bubbles though, so we had to throw it into the vac chamber for a couple of minutes. After we pulled it out of the vac chamber, we heated it up for a quick 30 seconds to get it back up to temp. And you can see right here that that flake is still throwing a good amount of flash. And the reason for that is because we took it slow and we didn't overheat our plastic, which a lot of the times when you're doing remelts can cause your flake to be dead and dull and not nearly as effective as if you would have took it slow and heated it properly. When it comes to soft plastics, I love anything green pumpkin because it not only works in a clear water scenario, but it excels in situations where you've got murkier water, you're fishing water that's more of a green or brown hue to it. It creates a level of contrast you don't get from other greens in the spectrum like your watermelons or your emerald greens. For that reason, that's why I tend to go with more of a green pumpkin base if I can. And as you can see, they turned out looking amazing. Still got a good level of transparency to them to where you could hold them up to the light, you could see right through these, you could see all the awesome color from that flake. but it's still got that level of saturation that will create the contrast in the murkier water, which is exactly what you need when you're fishing a finesse bait that's based on its visual presentation rather than the sound that it makes or the scent that it puts off. So it's definitely a great bluegill imitator and absolutely something that I would throw. So with the remaining plastic, I made a batch of our 5-inch kicking stick so we'd have a little bit of everything with us for this challenge, seeing as how we're going to be fishing at all new bodies of water and you never know when you're going to need a stick bait. It's a great clutch bait to keep on hand. So we got a pretty good haul from the Remelt, 8 of each craw, 4 grubs, 4 Ginger Ninjas, and 4 kicking sticks. So with the remaining plastic, we made a couple of packs of kicking craws so we could send those out to Jake for giving us such a cool idea for the video and for supporting the channel for so long. To start off, we're gonna throw that watermelon red craw Remelt Texas rig on a super line EWG hook, nice stout 4/0 hook, which is sturdy enough to handle the big bass and not bend out on you, but also light enough to not ruin the action and throw your plastics off balance when you're finesse fishing. So we've pegged a 16-ounce bullet weight on the end there. Typically we use that to also help us with casting as well as getting our bait to the bottom quicker. But since we're using a high salt content worm blend, I know that we're not gonna get the same buoyancy. It's basically just gonna sink straight to the bottom and sit there. So we're gonna fish it a little more aggressively, kind of keep it moving, hopping very little contact off the bottom. Sure enough, we got hit on the very first cast of the morning. So what better way to start off a challenge than to catch a fish on the very first cast? Watermelon red craw is the one that came through first thing this morning. Ripped the claws clean off of it, as you can see, which is to be expected when you see the kind of aggressiveness that you saw from this guy, who absolutely jumped out of the water up and flew about 6.5 feet across it before we landed him. So watermelon red was the first one on the board for the day. We're gonna tie on a new craw. As you can see, this one is destroyed. Get this guy back in the water, and then we're gonna try out a couple of new spots up here. After we got that guy back out in the water, we headed over to another cluster of lakes that we hadn't fished before. This time, fishing a little shade pocket, set up the finesse jig with a craw trailer, and we were getting bit right away. Now, as you can see with that first one, didn't quite commit, kind of hit it and spit it, so we immediately tossed it back out to the perimeter of that shade pocket. This time, slower, more methodically, just kind of shaking that jig, making contact with the bottom, making as much noise as we can, and doing everything possible to try to entice that bass to bite again. Sure enough, came up and hammered us one more time, but we just weren't able to catch him. I spent another 5 minutes or so on him to no avail. Headed over to another lake across the trail. Same thing happened there. Got hooked up with the bass, got a couple of cranks, ended up spitting it. So we decided to call it on the jig, throw the Texas rig craw back on because we were having luck with that and they just seemed to be having an easier time getting the bite. So set that craw up, tossed it right up along the bank here in front of this structure, lay down timber. Sure enough, number 2 bass for the day. Now definitely a lot smaller than the first one, under a half a pound probably on this one, but we're gonna call this challenge a win because we were able to catch 2 as well as get 3 potential other bites, all on the Remelt craw. We had a lot of fun doing this video. Thanks to Jake, our subscriber, for suggesting this idea. And if you guys have an idea that you'd like to see us do, leave a comment down below. Maybe we'll choose your idea in the future. If you like the video, you know what to do. Hit that like button for me. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because that's the best way to show your support. Until next time, I'm D with Kickin Bass TV.
Subscribe!